Our first order today, we have Senate Bill 155 by Senator Troy Carter. Senator, when you're ready.
Mr. Chairman, members.
And Senator, I'll add, I know we have a lot in attendance, and there's not opposition. Normally what we've done is we've had major proponents and major opponents come give testimony, and those that give this after that, we'll stay here as long as everybody wants to, but try to, some of it can get redundant, so everybody just pay attention that we're not saying the same thing over and over again. But the committee is here to listen to everyone.
Mr. President, members, Mr. Chairman and members, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Again, I would ask that, as you know, the governor was planning
Could you give me just some one personal pleasure there?
Sir.
Madam First Lady, Donna, it's an honor to have you in the room today. And yes, ma'am. Go ahead now.
Absolutely. You preempted me a bit, but that's good.
Okay. Back on track. We're back on
track.
Senate Bill 155. Let's start again.
As you know, this is a very significant issue for our governor. He's made this a part of his major plans for Louisiana to bring Louisiana in line with the rest of the country and providing a living wage for the citizens. The governor would certainly have been here today, but for the tragedies in Ruston. The governor, as you might imagine, is headed there to tend to the tragedy that our state has once again faced it in the area of a natural disaster. We are fortunate, as you just mentioned, to have our First Lady here, who has been a stalwart in fighting for Louisiana citizens. And again, I'd like to give her another round of applause for her presence as well as her tireless work on behalf of Louisiana. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We believe strongly in Senate Bill 155, which is what we believe will be a significant step in the direction of providing an increase in minimum wage and getting closer to what we believe are steps to create a true living wage. The truth of the matter is, every year that goes by without action, Louisiana is falling further and further behind. While we refuse to act, our neighbors in Arkansas have raised their minimum wage 3 times. Most recently, an $11 an hour ballot initiative that passed with 68% of the vote. If we do this, we will show people that we're serious about taking care of the working poor, the mothers and fathers who are out working, trying diligently to care for their families and to provide resources so they are not simply depending on the resources of government to survive. Hardworking men and people that want to go to work every day and earn a decent living to provide for their children. We note that in nearly every poll that's been taken, nearly 80% of Louisianians support increasing the minimum wage. Even if today, members of this committee, for whatever reason, are opposed to increasing the minimum wage, I ask that you support the measure before you, which is a constitutional amendment that will give the voters an opportunity to decide on should we have an increased minimum wage. Let the people of Louisiana weigh in. We've been elected by them to represent them here. And now we have an opportunity to, through a constitutional amendment, which will be on the ballot, to give the people of Louisiana an opportunity to weigh in on this very critical matter. Today, I'm joined by the presidents of several large companies and business people in our community. President and CEO Warner Thomas is with us. Prez Kabakoff, President and CEO of HRI, Historic Restoration, Inc., and President Bill Hamrick of the Lynx Restaurant Group are here with us to discuss the significance and the importance of increasing the minimum wage. While these CEOs are by far not the only CEOs that we have, there are 3 that were able to join us today in the host of so many others that have reached out to share their wisdom and their personal experiences of how their workforces have been enriched, enhanced, and made much more productive by providing a stable financial mainstream for them to provide for their families. Numerous other large companies have recognized that increasing the wage of workers have been a huge advance, an advantage to their workers, to productivity of their employees, to productivity of their enterprise that they operate or own. In fact, McDonald's recently announced that they will no longer advocate against minimum wage. As you know, they once were. Walmart also has not only removed their objection, but they have increased minimum wage. So we have a trend that's going on throughout our country that Louisiana, unfortunately, has fallen behind. I think we have a great opportunity to send a message to the citizenry throughout Louisiana that we care about our working people, that we care about those mothers and those fathers who are trying to provide resources for their families. Minimum wage was once declared and thought of as a summer job, a job for a teenager in school. But in this economy, that's not the case anymore. Now we have parents, grandparents even, competing for those part-time jobs and those minimum wage jobs, which speaks to a problem with our overall economy. But for those critics who say the world will come to an end, I challenge you that each time we've increased the minimum wage over the years, there has been no coming to an end of the world. In fact, things have gotten better because when people make more money, they spend more money. And it's recycled back into our economy, which provides for a better and more solid economy and a better and more solid family structure. So I would urge you to give your attention to these outstanding leaders that have joined us today as they give testimony. Warner?
All right, Senator, I see no questions of you now, so the next witness. And please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. I'm Warner Thomas. I'm the President and CEO of Ochsner Health System.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the opportunity to come and chat with you today. And certainly at Ochsner, we are in favor of minimum wage, and we actually raised our minimum wage to $12 an hour earlier on this year, both in southern Louisiana and also in northern Louisiana. Impacted about 1,500 people across our organization. And we did it after careful consideration.
I want to interrupt. Were you able to hire anyone at minimum wage?
We had significant turnover always at minimum wage. Actually, our minimum wage at that point was $8.10. We raised it from $8.10 to $12. Yeah, and basically we did it for a few reasons. One, significant turnover. Two, as we continue to study the situation, we realized that in our area, we need people focused on their work and what they do. And if they're worried about can they pay their bills, can they pay their rent, can they make their house note? I mean, these are just distractions to frankly work, and it's difficult for them to do their job and focus on what they got to do every day. But I would say that, and I just want to tell a brief story because I think this is really an important component of part of our decision. We were approached by an organization about 18 months ago called CreditWorks that was essentially designed to replace payday loans for employees. And they essentially come into an organization. We work with them to provide as an opportunity to our employees. We do not fund this. It's really just a conduit for the employees, and they can have essentially payroll deduction to pay the loans off. We thought we may have 200 or 300 people that would take advantage of this program in our organization. We opened it up. Within the first 90 days, we had 1,500 people who had signed up for the program. Essentially eliminating loans that have several 100% interest to loans that, they're not at mortgage rates, but they're between essentially mortgage rates and essentially credit card interest, but significantly cheaper than where they were before. Now we have about 2,100 people that take advantage of this program. And we realized after that situation that we really need to look at our wage situation, because I had no idea that we'd have over 2,000 people in our organization that had payday loans. And we started analyzing it. We started looking at our turnover at many of our lower paid positions, but critically important positions in environmental service, food service, areas that, cleaning our hospital, answering our phones. These are critically important positions. And what we found since we've raised minimum wage, engagement's improved, services improved, retention of our employees has improved, and we think it's a step in the right direction of peace of mind for our employees and making sure that they can focus on what they got to do day to day, which is take care of our patients versus worrying about their living wage. So that's a little bit about our story. We appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you today, and happy to take questions when it's appropriate.
All right. Senator Morrell for a question.
Thank you, Warner, for being here today. We really appreciate your attendance.
Sure.
One of the arguments we often hear about minimum wage is that market forces should determine it. It seems like from your story, you looked at the fact that not having a minimum wage exposed your employees to tremendous financial risk and hurt their well-being. And it appears from what you're saying that once you realized that your employees were in dire financial straits, you realized that it was affecting their productivity as employees, you took it upon yourself to address that concern. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it wasn't that y'all did a rate study of an area and said the market's this. It's you looked at what was a living wage for your employees.
We did. I think we looked at the living wage. We looked at what we thought was going to be reasonable for them to essentially have a quality of life, and as mentioned earlier, a living wage to be able to live in the areas that we're in. And we looked at something lower than 12. We decided to go to that level just because of the areas that we're in. But I would come out and say, we're a not-for-profit organization. We're not a highly profitable industry in healthcare. But as we look at where we make investments, at the end of the day, we only invest in programs or people, and without people, we cannot operate. And so we decided that this was the right place to make the investment. And I think that others, if they went down the same road, would see that there's an overall benefit to retain people in Louisiana, retain people in our communities, and versus having them potentially leave and go to other places. So that's what we've seen and what's our experience has been.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Johns for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thomas. Thank you for being here this morning.
Sure.
Just a ballpark figure, what percentage of your business or your employees would this affect, the $12 an hour?
So it affected, so we employ about 25,000 people across our organization. This affected in total 1,500 of those folks.
Okay, and this was statewide. I know you have.
It was statewide.
You have entities throughout our state.
Yes, it was statewide.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Senator Bishop for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Thomas.
Good morning.
Well, first, let me say this. First of all, I'm a proud patient of Oxnard. I've been going to Oxnard for a long, long time. You guys provide phenomenal service, particularly in the city of New Orleans.
Thank you.
And I was particularly intrigued when I heard that you had made this voluntarily adjustment to raise the wages of your citizens. I know many individuals. I happen to work in higher education. So many individuals who graduate, many of them go into the health profession. And so oftentimes we're battling with the states of Texas, the states of Mississippi, other places, try to keep those individuals here. But when you have a company as large and reputable as Oshner to voluntarily move forward and do this for the individuals that are there, I think it speaks volumes and sends out a clarion call to other individuals similarly situated in the state of Louisiana to do this particular piece here. One question that someone raised was that when we talked about, I guess, the bottom line, I am going to, and let me not assume this, let me have you to address this. In making this particular change, I'm assuming that individuals within your CEO community probably didn't see things the way that you did. So can you talk a little about, in hindsight, now that this has actually been put in place, not only the effect that it's had, I guess, on the monetary futures of your employees, but also on the goodwill, I guess, of other individuals, possibly increasing the amount of individuals who choose to go to Oshner because of the step that you guys made?
Sure. So I guess a couple of things. First of all, I would say, this was unanimously approved by our board. Our board is a mix of physicians who are internal, and then we have several external business people who are on our board. It was approved unanimously by our board to go forward with this decision. I would say that we have now seen several of our partners, such as St. Tammany, Terrebonne General, and others, follow suit. As they looked at this and studied it themselves, they felt that it made sense to kind of go in this direction. And I think it's one of these things that if you really don't, it's easy to overlook it, but as you start studying it and really take a look at what's happening in some of these jobs, very, very high turnover, and lack of commitment sometimes, and frankly, what we found is folks jump from job to job because they're trying to make a living, and if they can get another quarter, an hour, or whatnot, then they'll move. We felt by making this move, we have seen retention, we've seen better commitment, and we've seen now that other organizations, specifically in the health area, have followed suit.
Very good. My mother spent 30 years working in the healthcare industry. She was at New Orleans, well, it was then New Orleans Methodist Hospital. Now it's New Orleans East Hospital. So my entire family grew up there. And so I don't know exactly who the CEO was back then, a long, long time ago, but I'm glad to see that you, as the CEO of Ochsner, had the foresight to do that. And on behalf of the people of the city of New Orleans, we thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being a grateful patient.
All right. There's no other questions of the witness. Next witness, please.
Press Kabikoff, Chairman Reiser.
Come on, Press. Good to see you.
Nice to see you again. I'm actually executive chairman of the board, not presently the CEO of HRI Properties. We're headquartered in New Orleans. Okay. We renovate buildings, do hotels, apartments.
And you've done a lot of good work there doing that. I commend you.
Thank you. And we employ a couple of thousand folks, and all of them get $9 or above. And we wish we could do more, and we're looking at doing more. Let me just repeat what Warner says. It makes a difference in terms of productivity and reduces turnover, and we're hopeful that other business leaders do the same. In response to Senator Morell's question about the market, let me just say I'm a capitalist and believe that government ought to not interfere with the market more than necessary, and that ought to be a good rule. But it appears in the United States that we've got some real issues with income inequality. You've got 60% of the country that's not really seen real wages increases since 1980. 2/3 of that number, as I understand, have no real savings or no financial assets, and if they've got a $400 bill, it's a struggle to make that work. I took my daughter and a couple of friends to a fancy restaurant in New Orleans last night and spent close to that amount at $400. And I think that this is where government has to take a look at this situation, because the physical and mental, I would say, malnourishment of poverty is a real problem. And in Louisiana, which we, as I understand, we lead the nation in child poverty. When these families, many of them have children that are making a minimum wage, can't handle the health care needs or the academic needs, behavioral needs of these children, it means that you're producing unproductive people that become a burden on society. And so I would just feel very strongly that Louisiana do what 55 other states have done, 45 other states have done, and that would be aggressive, and fix this and try to fix this problem. And it's not a silver bullet. You're not going to solve the issues of poverty with raising the minimum wage. You've got to pay attention to early childhood issues. I think that what I saw the other day, that mothers are spending $700 of their $1,000 on child care. So I just think you need to take a look at this situation. This is a key component, and we recommend passage. Any questions? I'd be glad to answer.
I don't see any questions. I will make comment on you talking about the debt. There's a credit card debt nationwide. 52% of the population has a credit card debt that they can only make the minimum payment on. Of that, 38% of that 52 has one that will never retire. So we could debate the various reasons on whatever that might be, but that's a crisis that's in itself, Press, that you bring up. That's huge.
I agree.
Does any members have questions of anyone at the table?
We still have one other speaker.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Bill Hammock. I'm the senior partner of Link Restaurant Group in New Orleans. I kind of hope that press ate at one of our restaurants last night. And I'll also say that the term senior really applies to the fact I'm the oldest partner. I'd like to take just a few minutes to read some prepared comments that I want to share with the panel.
Bill.
First of all, thank you for letting me have the opportunity to be here. I believe the increase of the minimum wage in Louisiana is critically important. It will have a positive impact on Louisiana's most vulnerable working poor and move the needle, even if only slightly, to a place that they can better take care of themselves and take care of their families and children. As I'm sure you all know, the federal minimum wage was last raised in 2009. If you would have used just a CPI increase based on the Federal Bureau of Statistics, that increase would have moved the minimum wage from $7.25 to $8.73. But instead of having increases, we in fact have seen those who live on the minimum wage see their effective wage reduced by inflation to a point where now it's worth about $6.19. Now think about that. You'll have to agree that $12,751 is not a livable wage in Louisiana or anywhere else. And even if you use the $7.25, we're talking about $14,935 a year. Could any member of your family, could any of your children live on that amount of money on an annual basis? The answer is absolutely not. Before I continue, a little more about me personally. The Link Restaurant Group, we own and operate Herb Saint, Pesh, Cochon, Butcher, La Boulangerie, the Calcasieu Rooms, and as of last Saturday, we opened our newest restaurant in New Orleans, Gianna. All of these restaurants are located in New Orleans, and in New Orleans we employ 539 team members, none of which make the minimum wage. I also own businesses in Lafayette and in the Florida parishes, and over the course of my career, I've been fortunate enough to employ thousands of people, and almost all of those here in the state of Louisiana. Not one of these ever worked for less than a livable wage. And I'm very proud that that threshold was something I was able to provide, and I was proud of the impact it had on our employees. But that's only part of the story. I've been personally very successful, in large part because of that policy. I know that you probably are familiar with the United Way's Alice reports. These are reports that focus on our citizens who are employed but still struggle every week to provide for their families. Again, these are working men and women. That's who we're talking about here. Alice measures the total cost of household essentials they call a household survival budget. Housing, childcare, food, transportation, technology, healthcare, plus taxes and a 10% contingency. They have developed these minimum household survival budgets for every parish in the state, and I certainly encourage you to look up yours. For the Louisiana as totally across the state, that survival budget is $9.75 an hour for an individual, $26.99 for a family of four, 2 adults, an infant, and a preschooler. 47% of the households in Louisiana are below the Alice threshold. Think about that. Survival budget. In Orleans Parish, the number is $11.09. Here in East Baton Rouge Parish, it's $10.43. And you can see that talking about a $9 minimum wage still provides less than what is determined a survival household income. Our state can and must do better. If you're a business owner like I am, you don't want people working for you surviving. You want people working for you thriving. By ensuring everyone on your payroll has a livable wage, you create an environment where great things happen. First, people want to work there. Second, people want to stay there. And this allows you to hire and retain the best candidates. And that means productivity and profitability. I've enjoyed great employee morale and work ethic because I paid a higher wage, and it was a huge factor. This is why businesses like Walmart, as you mentioned earlier, has increased their minimum wage to $11 an hour. Amazon has moved to $15 an hour. These companies made those decisions because it was good for business, not because it was bad for business. And this is true for small business as well. If you look at the bigger picture, we have a greater impact on the overall economy when people make more money and have more money to spend. A raise in the minimum wage predominantly benefits low-wage workers, precisely those who are most likely to put additional income directly back into the economy, kickstarting a cycle of greater demand for goods and services, job growth, and increased productivity. Simply put, increasing the minimum wage is good for Louisiana, good for our economy, and good for business. Thank you very much. I'll be more than happy to take any questions.
Have a question from Senator Barrow. Senator? Oh, didn't. You got a live mic now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And really my question may be just in general to all of the gentlemen at the table. Since all of you made the decision to have your employees have a livable wage, have you seen any decrease in your business? One of the things that I know we've heard before was some folks talked about how the business would decrease and how they would have to raise additional costs to be able to cover the expense of raising the minimum wage.
Fortunately, at our business, we've seen year-over-year growth as we've adjusted wages upward in order to make sure that we are the place where people want to work. We've had nothing but a positive impact on our top line and bottom line.
In our business, we were awarded the best place to work in the city of New Orleans, and so that kind of attitude expresses itself well with the employees, and it makes a big difference for us to be known as paying reasonable wages and having good work rules, etc. It helps your company.
That's awesome. You say you guys received an award?
We were listed 2 years ago as the best place to work in the city of New Orleans. So.
That is awesome. So that really speaks to the naysayers who actually say that it's going to impact the business and they're going to see a shrinkage in business and being able to their business to survive. I mean, that's in essence of some of the comments that I know I've heard in the past. The other thing that I wanted to ask is the number of female workers, if y'all happen to know that by chance, because certainly the impact oftentimes for women is a lot different, and oftentimes they are single head of households. And so this impact for them, I'm sure, is tremendous.
Anecdotally, I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure that at least 50% of our employees are women.
Okay.
I don't know. I would assume 40%, but that's an assumption.
Our workforce is close to 60% women at Ochsner, and I would say that just from we have not seen an impact negatively on our business at all. Actually, we saw more patients in the first quarter this year than we have in the history of our organization. I would say, going back to kind of the comment about thriving versus surviving, I think it's really important, and I think from a business perspective, I think one of the ways to look at this is about an investment. We talk about making investments in buildings or equipment or buying a new business or something like that. It's an investment in people.
Yes.
And without great people, without motivated people, you cannot have a great business. And especially in our area where we're such a service-oriented organization, we purely look at this as an investment. That's kind of how we think about it, and beyond doing the right thing, which is a great way to look at it. It's been, I think, great for our organization and great for our patients.
Well, I just want to commend all of you for taking that initiative and taking that step to do that, because I know that the employees working for you are a lot happier as a result of that, and we are seeing the fruit of that. So again, thank you. And to Mr. Thomas, that was really interesting that you guys took a look at the payday lending and looked at how you could positively impact that, because many people, they are trying to get out of this trap, right? Yes. And so now they're out of the trap. But thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there are no further questions for our three guests, I'd like to personally thank them for taking time out of their schedules to be here. Obviously, they run organizations that require their time and talent, but they recognize the value of what we're attempting to do here. And I want to personally thank each of them, one for being contributors to our state by providing jobs and resources, and also being leaders and stepping up for those issues that some have run from. We greatly appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Madam Secretary. Madam Secretary.
I'm going to invite also to come to the table for brief testimony. We have our Secretary of Labor with us, Ms. Ava Dejois, and Dr. Ali, who is the Chief Economist for Louisiana Workforce Commission, just to briefly share some statistics on where we are and how we illustrate that the need for a living wage knows no bound. It's not party driven. It's not race driven. It's not driven by locale. Throughout all 39 senatorial districts and all 105 House districts, there are constituents that are in need of a living wage. So let no one say that their district is immune to this need. The statistics will bear out that throughout our entire state, people are hurting, and they're depending on us to do the right thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Mr. Chairman. Ava Dejois, Louisiana Workforce Commission. I'd like to share with you some of the characteristics of our Louisiana minimum wage workers, and Dr. Bustamante will focus on the economy, the growth that we've seen, the record growth that we've seen in GDP. And I'd also like to note that our not seasonally adjusted employment rate is 3.9% right now. 22.4% of all jobs, 425,000 workers in Louisiana, have an entry-level wage below $8 an hour. 7.7%, or 115,000 of those Louisiana workers, are full-time workers, and they earn less than $15,000 a year, about minimum wage. The Alexandria metro area has the greatest share of Louisiana workers working full-time, year-round, earning less than $15,000 a year. And 68.1% of fully attached workers earning low wages continue to earn low wages 1 year later. In fact, 33.7% of fully attached workers earning low wages continue to earn low wages 5 years later. This data is based on our wage records. Fully attached workers refer to those workers that have worked 3 consecutive months with the same employers. Nearly 300,000 workers of the 1.9 million covered workers in Louisiana earn less than $9 an hour. And 10.5% of Louisiana families with at least one head of household live below the poverty level. And it's primarily women raising children. The parishes where it remains the highest are East Carroll, where nearly 21.3% of all workers earning under $15,000 a year are women, and in Madison Parish, where 21.2% of all low-wage earners are women. The information, I hope, shows the trajectory of those that remain in our low-wage worker category based on our wage records. And this information, I believe, shows that in many cases, this is not an entry-level wage, that we have people systemically stuck in poverty, and this is based on our own information. And with that, I'll turn it over to, I'm sorry.
There's not a question, Madam Secretary.
Dr. Bustamante.
Doctor, if you identify yourself for the record.
Great. Hi, my name is Dr. Ali Bustamante, and I'm the Chief Economist for the Louisiana Workforce Commission, and thank you all for having me here. Just to provide some context in terms of just the broader economic perspective when it comes to minimum wages, one thing to keep in mind is that the minimum wage has actually been around since 1938, so we have a really good track record about what happens every time a minimum wage increases. In fact, in the state of Louisiana alone, we have records going back to 1976 that account for 12 different federal minimum wage increases in our state. So when we look at that information, when we look at the 29 states who have minimum wages, including 20 of which who had recent increases last year, 6 of which actually were through ballot amendments, just as the one that's being proposed now. When we look at this body of work, the 2 comparables that are really best suited for Louisiana comparisons are Arkansas and Missouri. just to give you a case in point, Louisiana's level of employment is about 2 million. Missouri is closer to 2.9. Arkansas 1.3. I always push back when people compare us to Texas because Texas has almost 13 million employees, so that's really not much of a comparison there. But that being said, Missouri increased their minimum wage since 2013. Right now at the current time, their minimum wage is $8.60 an hour, and their unemployment rate is 3.3%. So drastically lower than many of the states across the U.S. Additionally, Arkansas, which increased their minimum wage in 2015 and whose minimum wage is currently $9.25 an hour, they have an unemployment rate of 3.7%. When we look at the implementation of the state minimum wages relative to Louisiana, since Missouri implemented their minimum wage, they grew at a compound annual growth rate of 2.7% compared to 1.7% for Louisiana. And when it comes to Arkansas, since they implemented their minimum wage in 2015, they grew at 2.9% compound annual growth rate relative to 1.9% in Louisiana. So these two states actually have lower unemployment rates than Texas as well. When we look at the actual economic studies and the economic literature associated with the minimum wage, one of the ones that should resonate, I believe, is a study that was completed by the U.S. Census last year. And the U.S. Census ultimately found that the minimum wage, as other previous studies had found, had no employment effects, neither negative nor positive, while at the same time contributing to considerable earnings growth in both the immediate term and long term of workers.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, I'm not sure if you have a question or not, but we also have one other person to testify. We have Ms. Mara Sweeney, who is a student at Tulane University, to offer a student's perspective. I didn't mean to interject. If you have any questions for Dr. Bustamante.
There were no questions.
Okay.
Ms. Sweeney, identify yourself, please, again.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. My name is Maura Sweeney, and I'm an undergraduate student at Tulane University, studying political science and working at the United Way of Southeast Louisiana as a public policy intern. I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak today, and I really appreciate this opportunity. This policy will have benefits for thousands of Louisianans, their children, and our state's economy as a whole, as has already been addressed. But a population that is not always touched upon is that of college students. As a college student who has worked low-wage jobs for the entirety of my time at Tulane, I believe that this is a population I can speak for and would like to highlight the reasons that this legislation would help students like myself. To begin, I want to highlight the financial challenges that college students face. As we all know, there is a high cost for higher education, which can act as a barrier to entry for many young people. 70% of all college students graduate in debt, averaging $29,800 per person. This debt falls on top of the financial stressors that present throughout the college experience, including but not limited to the cost of tuition not covered by scholarship or loans, textbooks, housing, groceries, and gas money. Additionally, students have to save for the future and to pay off their student loans. These costs compound and result in many students seeking employment to either help cover these costs or to cover the costs fully if they are financially independent. 70% of students work while enrolled in college, 40% of full-time undergraduates, and 76% of full-time graduate students work 30 hours or more per week. Furthermore, roughly 50% of all college students are financially independent while enrolled in school. Now, I want to take a moment to break down the cost of attending college numerically using the minimum wage salary and the average cost of attending college or university. The numbers I use assume a 40-hour work week and include only the cost of tuition. A financially independent student who works full-time at the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour will make $15,080 annually. In 2016, the average cost of attending a 4-year public university was $19,189. Without loans, this student would not be able to attend a 4-year university, facing a deficit of $4,109. This would leave the student with the option of attending a 2-year public college, the average cost of which is $9,939. This would leave the student with only $5,141 left for any other necessary expenses throughout the year, such as textbooks, housing, food, transportation, clothing, and medical care. To compare this analysis to the experience of a college student 30 years ago, because as people have said before, the minimum wage has not really increased since then. The 1985 minimum wage and cost of tuition has been adjusted for inflation in 2019. A student working full-time in 1985 would make $3.35 an hour, which is $7.99 with today's inflation, which would result in $6,968 annually in 1985, or $15,642 in today's terms. You may note that this is actually higher than the salary of a current minimum wage student. Furthermore, the cost of a four-year public university was $5,504 in 1985, which is equivalent to $12,360 today. As I previously mentioned, the current average cost of attending a four-year public university is $19,189. So, as these numbers show, the minimum wage has not only depreciated in purchasing power over the past 34 years, but the cost of education has also significantly increased. It used to be realistic for a financially independent student to work their way through college without outside assistance, such as loans or assistance from family members, but with our current minimum wage, this is no longer possible. For students that are unable to secure loans or who do not have a social network to support them, gaining a college education is nearly impossible with our current minimum wage. In addition to this monetary conundrum, evidence suggests that students can be negatively impacted by having to work full-time throughout college. This is not to say that all work is bad, because there are benefits associated with working and learning at the same time, particularly when the work is related to the student's field of study. But working too many hours at a full-time rate can reduce graduation rates and negatively impact grades and future job prospects. It can lead many students to drop out after already taking out thousands of dollars in student loans. Aside from taking away from coursework itself, it can prevent college students from becoming involved on and off campus with activities such as unpaid internship positions, which can hurt their future job prospects, because most starting positions do expect students to have some level of relevant experience in their field. The burden of balancing education, enrichment, and employment is difficult for all working students, but it is particularly challenging for low-income and first-generation students. Raising the minimum wage would mean that students would be more aptly able to pay bills, and would potentially mean that college students could dedicate less time to work and more time to school and studies-related activities with their increase in hourly earnings. I hope that this testimony has illustrated the importance of raising our state minimum wage for an important low-wage group that often is ignored: college students. Young, educated people are the future of this state, and it is unfair for them to face such heavy financial burdens while trying to better themselves and improve our state's potential. Senate Bill 155 offers an effective solution for students who face these financial challenges, particularly those who are financially independent and belong to low-income or first-generation groups. Again, I thank you for taking time to listen to me today, and I urge you to support Senate Bill 155.
Thank you. We have a question from Senator Bishop.
Not so much a question, more so a comment. I appreciate your comments. I've had the opportunity to work in higher education for the last 24 years. And part of my job on a regular basis, to counsel individuals. And oftentimes, when an individual comes to see me, they come with a withdrawal form to either drop a class or they're trying to drop out of school whatsoever. And my sole job is to try to figure out a way to solve that problem to keep them in school. And it's almost as if you were sitting in my office right now when you made your comments, because that is the primary reason that it actually happened. Oftentimes, individuals want to get a college degree, but sometimes in the middle of getting a college degree, life happens. And when life begins to happen, oftentimes life takes precedent of what they're trying to do into the classroom. And so the idea of whether or not it's going from $7 to $9, $7 to $10, $7 to $15, to be quite honestly. But we understand that that's really in our best interest, not just for those individuals and those students, but for the citizens of the state of Louisiana. So I commend you for your remarks and look forward to supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
The board is clear.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll come back for my closing. I'll relinquish the table if there are opponents that...
Okay, what I'll do at this time, I'm going to read the cards in. Some of them have already given testimony, but I'll read them into the record of those that are wishing to speak, and I'll read those that are in favor of the bill do not wish to speak. Those in favor of the bill wishing to speak, press Kapikoff, Bill Hackman, Warren Thomas, Will Oshner, Julia Harris, Peter Robbins Brown, the Brown Coalition Equity Institute, Marie Sweeney, United Way of Southeast Louisiana, intern, Z. Antone, with the acronym SMILE, Javier Michaels, also with the acronym SMILE. Those were in favor of the bill and wish to speak. That'll leave anyone that just on that card that'd like to speak, or anyone that would that we left out. Right now, I'll read those in favor of the bill that do not wish to speak. but they are in favor of Senate Bill 155. Matt Wood with CWA, Shane Riddle, Louisiana Association of Educators, Shane Spillman, Professional Firefighters, Ann Steyer, Executive Director, National Association of Social Workers, Jan Moeller, Louisiana Burger Project. Sorry. Budget. With it looked like a D to me. I didn't know what a burger project was. Well, I'll probably have that tonight at the house when I'm barbecuing. We'll continue on with that. Susan Eastman Nelson, Louisiana Partnership for Children and Families. Devani Lewis, Louisiana Budget Project. Vivian Gilry. Candace Cassiope. Charmaine Cassiope. Charmaine, you surprised I finally got all that right, huh? I knew I was going to catch you off guard. Casey Stellings. Denise Marsh. Jana McGospey, is that correct maybe? Caroline Komarski, myself. Ed Parker. And there's like AFSCMC maybe. Lewis Wren, President of AFL-CIO. Danielle Duncan, with the acronym SMILE. Aaron Monroe Wesley, with Governor John Bell Edwards' office. Janet Barnes. Darlene Harris. Carla Franklin, with the Links Inc. Cynthia Posey, Louisiana Federation of Teachers. Cynthia Posey again. Dr. Jana Winder. That's with, who's that with, JP? Links Incorporated. With Link Incorporated again. Maretta Elbert, BR chapter of Links Incorporated. Jacqueline Bates. Diane Brandon. Baton Rouge Charter of Links also. Jinx C. Broussard. Hattie M. Broussard. Jacqueline J. Hill with Links. Okay. All right, those were those that were in favor that had an opportunity to speak, and those that were in favor that did not wish to speak. Who do you have with you,
Mr. Chairman? We are fortunate to have an additional three representatives of our youth community with an organization called SMILE, who would also like to share
Tell us what that acronym is.
I'm gonna let them do that in a second.
Okay.
I want to thank them for being here, and I think that Senator Barrow is responsible for having these young people here today, and we greatly appreciate them coming to share their perspective.
Senator Barrow, you have the mic.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was going to ask for personal privilege. As you may know, that there are several light blue shirts outside of the room here, and SMILE stands for Students Making Intelligent Lifestyle Experiences. So for this week, since they're on their break, rather than them being just out of school and just hanging out doing nothing, they have been participating in a week-long program learning about ACEs and traumas and things that contribute to their upbringing. And so they decided to come and actually participate in the process and talk about why minimum wage is important, not only to them, but their families, because we know that poverty or minimum wage is a great contributor to poverty. So we're glad to have them today. And now I will ask them to introduce themselves. Are not going to be long, but they definitely want to share their own testimonies. And I think it's wonderful that they are being a part of this process.
Well, first I want to commend you on coming to the table and taking time out of your day and participating. It means a lot to us to see that. So just before you speak, each one individual one, just say your name, so we'll need that for the record, and you'll have the floor. So whomever wants to speak first.
Okay.
Ladies first.
So I push the button, right?
It's already turned on.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Duncan, and me and my peers are here with SMILE Baton Rouge, and we're here to support the bill of minimum wage.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan.
My name is Jada Antoine. As my comrade already said, we're at the SMILE thing, so yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Javier. I'm a junior at Scotlandville Magna High School supporting the bill for the minimum wage.
Well, once again, I commend y'all for coming and continue to participate on any issue. So reach out and touch any of us or contact us. So thank you. All right.
Okay. Begin.
All right. We'll ask now. We're going to have someone else come to the witness table. Y'all didn't have any other comments?
Oh, we did. We thought you just wanted to introduce.
Okay.
First.
All right. Okay. Well, go ahead. You can go ahead. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Okay. Go ahead with your comments now.
I would like to support the passing of the bill for minimum wage because I feel that in relation with the average cost of living in Louisiana, the minimum wage is a lot less than what would be acceptable in, I guess, the scenario. For instance, if someone were to try and get minimum wage job, they would have to work multiple jobs in order to try and support themselves with the current cost of living. That would be including both health and transportation and food. And it's more difficult for people in the state to be able to do that because the minimum wage cost is like a lot lower. And I'll pass it on to my comrade.
All right.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Good morning to you all again. Like I said, I'm Javier Mickles, a junior from Scotlandville Magna High School. One reason that I wanted to touch upon what she said was the cost of living in the state of Louisiana. The cost of living in the state of Louisiana is constantly increasing, yet the minimum wage rates is not increasing enough. And it touches back on what she said again because that can affect poverty. And there are some families working 2 jobs yet to still make ends for their own families that are constantly still living in poverty. So I feel that it's very important that you should raise the minimum wage because, one, it can prevent poverty and get some of the citizens in the state of Louisiana to live in better living environments, better communities, and to support for their children educationally, mentally, physically, and health-wise. So I thank you all for giving us this opportunity to come speak before you to support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mickles. Ms. Duncan?
Yes, sir.
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you.
All right, now I'm going to read the cards in of those in opposition and give them the opportunity to those that would like to speak. First, though, those that are in favor, that are in opposition to the bill do not wish to speak. Renee Amar with Pelican Institute is opposition to 155. Those that are in opposition that would like to speak, Don Starnes with NFIB and Jim Patterson with Lobby LABI. Ms. Starnes, please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Dawn Starnes, State Director of the National Federation of Independent Business here in Louisiana. Good to see you all again this session. I think it's my first time up. So I've prepared a few remarks. Keep everybody on point and keep us moving. As you probably know, I think I've talked with you before about our membership. We represent 4,000 small business owners across the state of Louisiana, representing every industry segment of the economy. Our members alone in the state employ roughly 175,000 people. A few points about why we oppose the minimum wage and the creation of one here in Louisiana, specifically, and setting it in the Constitution. We already know that our Constitution is broken just by looking at Article 7 of it and our tax structure. We have a number of proposed changes to it and things that we need to do, and looking at a constitutional convention, we just don't believe that minimum wage is the appropriate place for the Constitution is the appropriate place for minimum wage. And while I respect and appreciate the CEOs who came before me to speak, I think it is important to note that they all represent large businesses, healthcare in particularly, which is partially subsidized by state and federal dollars. And while we respect, again, what they do and what they provide in the community, they don't represent small business. And the bottom line for them is that we don't have the cash reserves that larger businesses have and set in the. What are you laughing at me, or are you laughing? Okay? All right, you're chuckling over there, and you gave me trouble before. Just yesterday, the SBA released the annual survey of small businesses and their profiles of each state. The stats for Louisiana were unimpressive. Small business lost 10,105 net new jobs during the last period studied. Yet they still employ the majority of the private business workforce. In Louisiana, I come to you all regularly and say that Louisiana's small businesses are the job creators of the state. state, and those numbers bear out. We employ 52.8% of the workforce in Louisiana. In the third quarter of 2018, Louisiana grew at an annual rate of 1.9%, which is slower than the overall economy of the country at 3.4%. Louisiana, in February of 2019, Louisiana's unemployment rate was 4.9%, up from 4.7% last February, and above the unemployment rate at the national level, which is 3.8%. Important to note in the SBA release of the profile of the state, 3 industries were noted as the top industries for small business employees. One was healthcare and social assistance, second was accommodations and food services, and third was retail trade. So kind of taking what the SBA has kind of just recently put out again yesterday with their profile of the state, I wanted to kind of follow up with some things that we've looked at. We come here again to oppose this legislation because, as we have always, we believe that philosophically the market should dictate the wages, and an arbitrary increase will only hurt the people that proponents are saying they want to help. Our research foundation estimates that a total net jobs loss of 36,000 jobs in Louisiana if this legislation passes. That's 36,000, and alone last year we lost 10,000. This legislation would exacerbate the problem of job losses. And while Arkansas may have increased, Texas increased their minimum wage, Texas, Mississippi, and Alabama, our other neighbors, have not. And several other states, nearly half the country, is at $7.25. A few additional job loss numbers from our studies. 57% of the job losses would come from businesses with fewer than 500 employees, and 43% of the job losses would come from employers with less than 100. So about a quarter of them, and about a quarter of that total job loss figure would be in 3 main industries: food service and drinking establishments, retail, and administrative and support services. And if you recall, I just mentioned that the SBA report showed that Louisiana small businesses employ 3 major categories, 2 of which are retail and food services. So, again, we come here in opposition of this bill and ask you to defeat it today. Let the job creators of this state continue to do what they do and create jobs based on what they can do. Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. I see no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Jim Patterson with the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. And rather than specifically echoing the comments that preceded mine, I would just simply note that I appreciate Senator Carter bringing his legislation. We've had this discussion every year, and very much appreciate his heart and his belief in his legislation and the intent of it. We just simply have a different philosophy and viewpoint when it comes to the economics of his proposal. Appreciate the things that have been done by the individuals that spoke alongside him with regard to their employees. Certainly commend their insight and their efforts on behalf of their employees. The difference is that they had the economies of scale to make that work, and it was something that they could afford to do. This legislation is a one-size-fits-all approach that essentially means all businesses would have to comply, and not all businesses would be able to, hence our opposition to the legislation. Thank you.
I see no. I do have one more card that was in favor of this. I see no questions for y'all. Thank you for your testimony. And I want to read one more card in before I give Senator Carter the right to close. Melissa Flournoy was in favor of the bill but did not wish to speak. That was on Senate Bill 155. Senator, you have the right to close.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for your indulgence, and thanks to all of the speakers, particularly our young people, who came out and took time to be a part of the process.
I agree.
I think that says a lot. It says that they're paying attention. It says that they recognize and they're watching their leaders, and they're hoping that we'll do the right thing. And respectfully, while we may disagree, Don and Jim have constituencies that they represent, but I appreciate and respect that they come to the table in a civil way each time we have this debate. We disagree, but we do so respectfully. I think it's important to note, as Mr. Hammock said, we should be creating an environment where people do more than just survive, that they thrive, that families are able to care for themselves. When we talk about people who are quote unquote on the public trough, people that require social assistance, I dare say most of those people are given the opportunity to have a meaningful job, a meaningful career, an opportunity to earn a decent wage, that they would take it. The person standing on a street corner, in more times than not, are speaking loudly about a failed economy. I'm not talking about those that may be scamming. I'm not talking about those who may be attempting to beat the system. I'm talking about those that are legitimately hurting, those that are in pain, that need help, and they want to work. But to go to work and to be paid $7.25 an hour, even after doing a 40-hour week and all the overtime you can get, doesn't pay the bills. I implore you to dig deep into your hearts and far beyond the partisan divide, far beyond Republican or Democrat. Forget the L, the R and the D behind our names. The people of Louisiana, they're L. We're Louisianians. And we stand up for our people regardless of their race, their gender, their party, or their locale. They're depending on us to do the right thing. And in this case, we've made it a little bit easier for you. Even those who have decided that you don't support it, or philosophically you think it's not the right thing to do. In the highest spirit of democracy, what this bill asks you to do is give the people of Louisiana an opportunity to vote on it. Let them be heard. Do not block and deny the citizens an opportunity to be heard. This is not a new issue. This is quite an old issue, in fact. I was on a radio show recently, a rather conservative listening audience, and someone said, Senator, I think you're doing a great job raising the minimum wage to $9, but why are you not going higher? And my quick response was, have you been to the legislature lately? I'd love to go higher, but I recognize we have to start somewhere. I recognize that even $9 is not the end-all, be-all, but it certainly is a heck of a lot better than $7.25. In my close, I would like to once again offer our prayers to our friends throughout the state that have been impacted by the tornadoes today. And we ask that we have traveling grace for our governor, who's out right now with those families and with those people that have been stricken by this natural disaster. I want to also publicly thank the governor for making this a major issue. And it has been from day one, and he hasn't faltered one step. And I also want to thank First Lady Donna Edwards, who's here, who has been by his side in this fight, in fighting for all people in Louisiana. We owe them a great debt of gratitude because they recognize the importance of this issue, again, knows no racial or party bounds. I urge your favorable passage of this legislation. Thank you, sir.
Senator, you have closed, but you have a couple of questions. You want to yield, or you want to finish your close? No. Senator Bishop.
No question. I'd like to move favorable at the appropriate time.
Okay. Senator Barrow, did you have the same motion, or do you have he's already closed?
I did, but did you say how many, or the percentage of people who have actually said or in support of us raising minimum wage? Did you
I think the average poll is anywhere from 75 to 80% of every poll taken throughout the state of Louisiana. None have dipped below 70% of people suggesting that they agree that we agree that there should be an increase in minimum wage. And I will tell you that the sample size and the sample grouping is a microcosm of the entire state.
Yes.
This is Republicans, Democrats, independent, and other of all races who likewise say, when we combine those totals, that nearly 80% consistently across the board support an increase in minimum
north
wage.
to south, east to west.
That is correct, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Also,
All right, we have a motion by Senator Bishop to report Senate Bill 155 favorable, to which Senator Peacock objects. If you're in favor of the bill, you will vote yes. If you're opposed, you will vote no. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Carter?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Johns? Yes. Senator Bishop? Yes. Senator Peacock? No. Senator Barrow? A happy yes. Senator Morrell?
Yes.
Yes. That would be 5 yeas and 1 nay.
Senate Bill 155 will be reported favorable.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and thank everyone in attendance.